From Decrypt Media, this is the Decrypt Daily, and my name is Matthew Deemer. Today on the show, I have a candid conversation about, well, a lot of things. From social media, to your data, to regulation, Web3, and so much more. That's today on the Decrypt Daily. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Today is Friday, July 16th, 2021. I'm going to forego listener questions today because I do have quite a few listener questions, but they are very in-depth. Some have to do with regulation, some have to do with Web3. By the way, Sean, Web3, I have a conversation coming up next week about that. I do have also things about Bitcoin mining and like comparisons from EV adoption to the electricity usage of ETH and Bitcoin. So it's just a lot of in-depth research that I have not had time to do, and I'm actually pushing those to Decrypt, so see if they want to write an article about some of these questions. So I am looking at them. It's just taking some time. But what I do want to do right now is talk about Jackson Palmer, the founder of Dogecoin. He left the project in 2015, but he put out a tweet the other day, and I had some replies to that tweet. He said, "After years of studying it, I believe that cryptocurrency is an inherently right-wing, hyper-capitalistic technology built primarily to amplify the wealth of its proponents through a combination of tax avoidance, diminished regulatory oversight, and artificially enforced scarcity." And so I had a couple replies to that. First one is from John. John said, "Thank you for taking comments on this. First, Jackson Palmer appears to have first world problems, ignoring that many families throughout the world who are using cryptocurrencies to survive and actually thrive, and to have hope in place of accepting whims of some authoritarian regime. Second, not all cryptocurrency projects are alike. A project like Cardano is vastly different from a joke project like Dogecoin. You can say it's altogether completely different from Doge. Likewise, the countless hours of work going into many of these top projects speak for themselves. Finally, with the above in mind, it seems like he's projecting Doge, which is a joke meme, onto other crypto projects. Below is an article from way back in 2013, and there are countless other examples." From John. That link he's referring to is a Wired article from 2013. Link is in the show notes. The next comment comes from Zach, and Zach gives us another link to Reddit. Zach says, "I'm fairly left-leaning, and I really appreciate the takes in this thread on this fairly obscure subreddit. Ultimately, I lean on cryptocurrencies and blockchain overall as being fairly neutral in values. Like with most tools, they can be used or abused." Thanks, Zach and John. I appreciate those comments. If you have any comments, you can always send me an email, matthewaaron@decrypt.co. Now, let's get into those crypto prices.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
And I'm recording this at 11:50 Eastern Standard Time. Bitcoin is sitting at $32,130, up 1.2% in 24. Ethereum, $1,930, up 0.7% in 24. Tether's in the number 3. Binance is in the number 4 at $311, down 0.6%. And Cardano's at the number 5 spot at $1.22, down 0.8%. Running off the top 10, we have XRP, USDC, Dogecoin, Polkadot, and BUSD. Total market cap, we're at $1.28 trillion, continuing the slide down, the slow decline. But the BTC dominance is up to 46.9%. In our main conversation today, it's actually an expansion on a conversation I was having the other day. We were having this conversation, Ben and I, offline, and it got kind of heated. It was just like, hey, kind of an argument or a discussion or discovery of actually what we're talking about, until we figured out what we were talking about. He was coming at this as a businessman, somebody that was trying to create a decentralized social media network, and I was looking at this as somebody who's running for Congress, more of a macro, maybe as a legislator. And the question in the comments, like, well, this is a pretty in-depth conversation. And the questions and comments comes from your data to how we should be regulated, if we need to create a way for us to protect our data, who's in charge of this, is it coming from the private sector, is it coming from the government, should we legislate? And it's just an interesting conversation of discovery. I think that we have to have more of these conversations to understand what people are feeling, have more of like an education of what people are doing with our data when it comes to either Facebook or Google, or I don't know, just even they can read what's on your clipboard. That's kind of messed up. And we talk all about that here. It's a little bit meandering. Sometimes we get a little off track, but it's a good conversation and I wanted to share it with you. So enjoy. And if you have any questions, comments, or if you want to join in this conversation, send me an email, matthewaaron@decrypt.co.
Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Look at this. Look, so you reached out to me via Twitter. You are a fellow Ohioan from my district. I like how I'm calling it my district. Since I'm running for Congress, this is the same district. And you are not only living in the district, but you're also in the blockchain space. You're not there right now. You're doing the good work somewhere else in the United States. You can tell us about that later. But really quick, we had an interesting conversation yesterday, and I wanted to basically put it down on tape because I think these are the kind of conversations that people have to have, not only people who are in office, running for office, or just, involved in the day-to-day system of your data in social media and what social media is doing to society. And you're building something really quick. This is not a promotion of your company. We were having a bigger conversation about that. And I'm not telling you this for anything. I'm telling the listeners this because I want them to understand what they're going to get themselves into. And hopefully it's a debate about social media, data, and what we should be doing to fix some things. So tell us a little bit about yourself really quick.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Name's Ben Schroth, from Matthews District in Ohio, hailing from Medina, Ohio. Went to college, studied computer science, and where I fell in love with cryptocurrencies and the decentralization of not only our data, but also our finances. With that being said, with data sovereignty, financial freedom, and this paradigm shift of our internet from a Web 2.0 internet to the Web 3.0 internet, which I'm sure we'll get into.
So why don't we just get into that now, man? Explain what Web 2.0 is and what Web 3.0 is.
Yeah, so when the internet was first created, it required a lot of centralization. So a lot of your information, when the internet first came out, it was colleges talking back and forth. So it required a lot of centralized computing, these mainframe computers. And as we grew out, as that was more the Web 1.0, those super centralized. And as we advanced for social media, those early MySpace, AOL, AIM days, it required these companies to have centralized servers to be able to communicate. So for example, anytime you use Facebook or Twitter, you are communicating with Facebook or Twitter's data centers. The paradigm shift now that we're talking about, now that we have computing devices, the ability to be walking around with a computer in our pocket, we now have the ability to have a more decentralized internet. And what that means is having the ability to have services and bring benefit back to the user, which gets into the business models where a lot of data scraping and stuff comes from going into these data centers and being able to break away from that and having a more decentralized internet.
Excellent. And so what we're really talking about right now is we're talking about decentralized data. We're talking about basically incentivizing people to, and this is what we were talking about yesterday, to use a different kind of social media. Look, everybody's on like Facebook, and this is very centralized. We already know what Facebook does, for better or worse. They take your data, they use that data, and they collect it, and they crunch the numbers. They know how to target ads. They know how to sell their ads. They know how to make money off of it. They not only do that to make money, to also influence you to buy things, but they also influence your personality. They get you addicted to the apps. They influence different ways of thinking, even by either purposely or not purposely. But those are all parts of the centralized social media system. I guess the first question is if we're going to go to a Web3, more decentralized system, does that even correct the problems that exist right now?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I think the root of the problem with Web 2.0 and getting into this paradigm is the business model of the internet. So taking social media specifically, the business model is to keep your eyes locked on the screen as long as possible. So they need to collect a lot of data about you just to keep you on the screen, sells more ads to be able to sell more products. So what they need to do is design these algorithms to keep you on the screen for as long as possible. So it needs to know everything about you. It needs to create a model that knows your entire personality, kind of your ticks, how you're going to act, how you're going to react to ads, and also be able to compare you with other users, people that you're mutually connected with, your friends, people who you follow, so that they can give you designed feeds, almost siloed feeds, where it is going to be confirming to your biases. It's going to be feeding you content that you're more likely to engage with. And that gets more into the human psychology and how social media has been exploited the evolution of our brain and our psychology to keep us addicted, change our behaviors, and really model ourselves so that they could sell more products to us.
Yeah, but did you address what like the main ethos of this? Because my ethos is like their apps, their businesses work because of what you just said. It taps into like our dopamine centers. It gives us a drip every time we get a like or scroll, a new thing popping up. Where they want us glued to those screens. And I can tell you right now, my screen time on my phone is well into the 8, 9, 10 hours a day. It's absolutely embarrassing, and I should probably edit that out. But I, and as we spoke yesterday, my ethos is that just by making new products, making a Web3 and changing the incentives doesn't actually go with like the, I want to call it the macro level problem that we want to solve. And that is the data, the data that people are trying to mine to use in different ways, for monetization, for, influence, to persuasion, and all those other things. And so I guess I want to understand how the private sector can help us control our data, monetize our data, and create security within our, not only the apps or dApps that we use, but also our identity.
Yeah, so I think when we talk about that, and we got into it a little bit yesterday, we have 3.2 billion people on social media right now that is collecting all this data about ourselves, our personalities. And what's going on is we just have so much data. So Google, the biggest data aggregator in the world, has over 5.5 gigabytes of data just on you. That's over 3 million Word documents. And Facebook, about 600 megabytes of data on every single person. So we have these data aggregators that are collecting a bunch of data that they don't even know what to do with right now. So for the private sector, and what it comes down to is the money. So as a content creator on a social media platform using Google, because Google services has YouTube and Facebook has Instagram, stuff like that, entire industries have been created where to monetize your content, you have to get ads. You have to put ads onto that content. So the way, and to sell more ads, they need to know more about you. So it's kind of, we're in this loop and we're kind of stuck where we need to be collecting more data, but there's almost more data than they know what to do with. And these models are just getting better and better. So for a private sector, it's fixing this Web 2.0 data model where you don't need to monetize through advertisements, through collecting data, where it can actually be, and where content creators and influencers don't have to rely on their revenue stream to be through these advertisements, which then is from that data collection, where it can be actually, monetized through paywalls or tipping or any other kind of different kind of dApps that we're using now. It's about spreading the spread of wealth and the distribution of this wealth to the majority of the internet.
These companies don't know what to do with all this data, and I want to push back a little bit on that, and then I want to talk a little bit about what you said about Web3. And we've established that we are coming from two different angles of this conversation. You said they don't know what to do with all this data, and that's what companies are popping up to try to tackle. It's like, you have all this data. You said 3.3 gigabytes. Google has 800 megabytes from that Facebook has on every individual that's on their platforms or using their services. And then you have companies coming out like Cambridge Analytica that are looking at this data, coming through this data, and saying, "Hey, we can use this for political purposes around the globe." And so when you said that monetization and selling ads and using this data to sell ads, I kind of feel like that is a niche. Okay, it's a major portion of this data and how the business models are created. Let me say this, but it's only one aspect of the use cases for your data. And we saw that with Cambridge Analytica and other companies that are probably hanging out in the back that haven't been found out yet, that are really using your data in very malicious ways. So it goes back to like what I think that the government or governments should be doing around the world is knowing that data should be protected in private, and it should be controlled by the individual. And so since we have something like Web 3 coming out, or blockchain, or these other ways to secure your data, to secure this personal information that you are generating by using these products or just going through life, there should be a new kind of way to look at your data and say that this is sovereign information by the individual that only they control and that nobody else can take. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, that's all. And I want to make a clear distinction. Web 3.0 is more kind of like an idea, just how can the internet benefit the user? And that does include a lot of blockchain technologies. And that's what we see coming out. And we call it the private sector, but I don't think it does it justice, because a lot of what's being done on the blockchain and a lot of these projects that are coming out for digital identity and protection of data, it's open source. We can see what's going on. A blockchain is a open and transparent ledger, so that we can see this. I think where we kind of not disagree, but where this conversation, this discovery debate is coming from, is how does the private sector, or how does the government, where does regulation come in? How do we do this to protect? And I'm more in the camp of that it's just going to come from the private sector, a bunch of developers, open source software with this Web 3.0 paradigm. And in me specifically, I'm more depth into social media and solving that problem, where you're the more macro scale, which will come with protocols that are accepted by regulation.
Do you think that private sector is going to have the ability to do what we need to do to protect that data? Do you think that just moving people over to new forms of social media with new kinds of incentives is going to be the way that the future social media user is going to be protected? Or is that another exploit that, just savvy, smart, crafty entrepreneurs or individuals are going to figure a way to exploit? And so I guess where I'm trying to have this conversation is, where does the protection for the consumer or the individual come in? And I do not think that the private sector, even though they will create tools or solutions, will be able to it will be able to implement them in a way that is all encompassing and all protecting and all and covering the bigger macro picture, because of the private sector is looking at these certain either revenue streams or business models or products. Like if you're using social media and you're like, well, I want to use the Web3, decentralize it, and the data, blah blah, and you're going to use tips to give the incentive to act, engage with the platform, that still doesn't transfer from anything outside of that one siloed, and even using siloed as being within that brand or that app or that dApp, outside to other forms of either other social media platforms or dApps, or other places where your data could be used.
Yeah, so two different answers to that question. One being the free market and competition. We have monopolies in social media, just anti-competitive. And what we're kind of seeing is that the business model of social media is being pretty tapped. It's close to being tapped out. That's why Instagram is going with a shopping feed and adding, new features, and they're kind of copying each other. So with the free market, okay, we see this business model is kind of being tapped out, and people are getting fed up with what's going on, the polarization in our country, and what these algorithms, and we can talk about content curation algorithms and how those are built to create more polarized communities. But I think what the free market wants, and the market is in response to human emotion. And I think there's a need right now that people, even though they don't really understand the complications of their data being taken, the free market and competition is asking for a different way, a different business model to bring value and benefit to the end user. Talked yesterday, I asked a lot of people when I'm talking to them about my startup, I say, how much did you make on your last Instagram post? And they kind of chuckle at me and they go, well, nothing. Well, why didn't you make any money off of it? Instagram made money off of it. Why aren't you making, their ARPU, their average revenue per user is $15 over year. So I think the free market is good in just enabling competition and more competition in the space and opening up to new business models is one way that will come up. And then the second is network effects. The biggest thing that drives social media platforms is network effects. So, when all your friends are on one platform, you're not going to be on another platform. You're going to be on that platform. And what drives social media networks is it's not really the social networking app in itself. It's people's favorite content creators, influencers, which keeps them coming to the app. So good content brings more people. And what we're seeing now is a lot of content creators, influencers, they're being demonetized. Maybe they cuss or they have alcohol in a video, for example, and they get demonetized, and that removes their revenue stream. So they have to go to different services such as Patreon, or they have merch lines and stuff like that where they have to find this money. Well, if we design a social media platform, and as this transitions to a Web 3.0, these content creators, influencers are going to be more aligned to the business model that benefits them the most, which someone, with hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, or even, smaller YouTube channels or, Instagram accounts, they will bring that audience with them if they start posting on that other platform, because it's what benefits them. You see a lot of them there, hey, go donate, stuff like that. Content creators and influencers, which bring the networks effects of these applications, are going to bring their audience with them.
You said something that I want to hone in on a little bit, and because I think it's pretty important right now in at least American politics, and that's division, right? So we're talking about division. We're talking about how being within these social media platforms and having the algorithm tailor the feeds to basically move you into certain groups and certain demographics, because it's just easier to, tailor information to you if you are in a certain group or demographic, is creating more division. Mm-hmm. And then to that, I say that this is why we need to have a comprehensive new look in regulations about how the internet works and how these internet companies work, or these social media companies, or anything uses that connects people in this way, because of the exploitations that we've seen throughout the past, let's call it decade, and just the network effects, going to your second point, of these platforms. And when you said content creators, I think that a lot of people don't realize that everybody who is on the platform is a content creator. We think of a content creator as our favorite YouTuber because they have 1 million followers or whatever, and they're a content creator. But every person on every social media platform is a content creator. It just depends how much content you're putting out, how much work you put into that, and if you're trying to monetize it or what you're trying to do with it. But even if you have 50 followers on Instagram or 100 friends on Facebook, you are a content creator to just a smaller audience. That still is a way of feeding into this massive system. So moving back into my more macro view, and where I think that the private sector, and again, please don't get me wrong, I don't think that we should stifle any kind of information or companies or new ideas or businesses coming out. With that said, we've already seen the rabbit hole of YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and these social medias. We already seen this. We already understand the worst case scenarios, and we do see the inequalities, we do see the division, we do see the massive companies that are being created off of basically the backs of their users. I mean, we've never seen companies this big before in the history of the country. Wait, the East Indian Trading Company was pretty damn big. Let's say that bad. But again, that was created on the backs of a lot of people that are taken advantage of. So I think that we really have to think about, like, how do we protect the individual at this point in the digital space?
Yeah, and that comes when we talk about putting out the fire of all this data that's being collected for the business model, and then also for public data, whether it's gene information or your social security number or bank information, that is something that is a public service, your social security, your birth certificate, stuff like that. So those are going to be protocols that are put into government. Okay, this is how we're going to do it. Use this, blockchain technology, most likely, because that's the most secure way to do it. And that's things that we need to push. The social media, stuff like that, tech is going to be in the private sector, but these public services, such as your social security, the birth certificate, all that kind of information, tax ID, voter information as well, should be, if that is going to be provided by the government, if it's going to be a government ID, then it should be protected in a way that, you know, you don't just get a piece of paper when you're born and they're like, yeah, hold on to that. And if you lose it, there's mountains of paperwork after that, you know?
Right.
Yeah, we have these technologies, and, you know, like I would say, it's regulation and legislation is always going to be laggard to technology. And we need people like yourself, Matthew, that are going to step in and say, hey, we have this technology for a country that prides itself on its innovation. We need to be pushing these issues that, you know, this old legacy technology, and be pushing it towards more this Web 3.0 idea.
I like how you just kind of like tapped my ego a little bit. We need more people like you, Matthew. I'm like, oh, okay. And
Hey, you put Bitcoin in your bio. I'm right behind you.
Man, that was crafty of you. I appreciate that. That was skillful. You mentioned to me yesterday that people don't care about what about their data. They don't care like their data is being used. They don't. Do you want to go on this podcast and say that people don't care about that? Is or please can you clarify that, because I want to go off on that a little bit.
I said that specifically, just like social media tracking. So, you know, what's on your feed, who you're liking, whose profiles you're viewing, location data, you know, even down to being able to read what's on your clipboard on your phone. That kind of data. When you get data such as banking information and, you know, your social security number, stuff like that, people do care about that. But mostly the social media information to be able to give you hyper targeted advertisements and hyper curated content.
Is it that people don't care? Is the study actually that you know from this is people don't care, or they either actually don't know how much data is being generated by them? They, like, for example, to know that what's for an app to read what is copied on your clipboard, people don't know that exists. Is it that they don't know what is actually being generated or what is accessible to these companies? Or are they making a decision that is saying, I rather use this app because my friends are on it, and you said network effect. My friends are on it, and everybody's on it, and that's how I can get my news and communicate and stay up to date. And I'm going to have that trade-off for the data aspect of it. Is there? So I want to question, what does I don't care mean? Does it mean or is there a trade-off, or they actually don't care?
I'd say it's more illiteracy. People don't know. You can't see it. You know, you don't know when, and we see that, you know, Apple now showing whenever an app's using your location, stuff like that. There's those services now, but it's more just tech illiteracy and not knowing the, you know, the effects of them having this much information, because you can't see the models that they are building for these content curation algorithms. So it's not so much, it's sort of, I don't care and I don't know. And, you know, and plus these services are fantastic, you know, and alcohol, and these are drugs. They are digital crack cocaine. Every time you scroll, when, you know, it's like when you swipe up to refresh on your feed, it's like pulling a slot machine. So they don't care, because an alcoholic knows that alcohol is bad for them, but they're still going to reach for the bottle. You know, even they know that these social media is not good for you. It's you're just hitting dopamine, you know, every 2 seconds. They don't know, but they don't care, because their favorite content creators on there, they get their news on there. So it's just kind of how it's built, and it's just the illiteracy, not knowing of what the effects of it are.
Okay, good. So we both kind of, I say we agree on this, that I think that it's both of the trade-off and the literacy. And I think that Apple, here's my own little kind of like theory. And tell me if you agree with this. I think Apple is, one, being very damn smart, but they are now privatizing identification and government regulation. And what do I mean by that? Apple has come out with, and is fighting with Facebook and fighting with Google, and allowing all these people to opt out of sharing data across apps and, you know, across different ecosystems, and these, you know, these whole structures that are created that we don't even know about. And they're fighting against that. And so they integrated that into their ethos, into their user experience, into their, why am I going to buy an Apple phone, an iPhone, an iPad, a Mac? Because of the protections to my data. I can opt out. That they have created a product out of
something I think that should have been regulated by the government a long time ago. Do you think that, one, that is a good thing, that the in my opinion, the responsibilities of Congress and legislators and the government to have these consumer protections come in is now being privatized, almost like a way that the government doesn't have to have this conversation, if you will. I kind of see it with the First Amendment conversation as well, right?
Mhm.
It's that the government or legislators, it's hard to have that conversation. It's divisive. It's very nuanced. It's very complicated. It's very, it'll be an impassioned conversation, but it's
Mhm.
easier to not have that conversation and allow the private companies to do what they want and just say, it's a private company. If you want your
Mhm.
data protected, use Apple. Oh, it's a private company. If you want your, if you don't want to be banned from Twitter, don't use that. It's their company. They can do whatever they want.
Mhm.
Do you agree with that statement?
Um, yes and no. I think Apple's making good strides in privacy and bringing it, to focus for a lot of people. But I don't. What they're doing is by not allowing people to use like data to be shared between apps, then they become the biggest arbitrator, like biggest
Right.
aggregators of data. So
They're the new
then they
mob
own it.
boss.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and data is the new oil of the 21st century. So if they are the only ones that have access to this data, then what makes them any different from a government body or a state-backed body? So the whole idea is that kind of gets away from the idea of Web 3.0, which is data transparency, having open protocols. I'm a cryptocurrency, I'm a blockchain enthusiast, a maximalist, and what it's about is open transparency, open source software, open and transparent protocols where you can see what's actually going on. There's no barrier to entry to this information, like a Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of those cryptocurrencies that are coming out. Specifically Bitcoin, it's an open and transparent protocol. There's no barriers to entry. So by them saying we're privacy focused, and I think it's more of a clever marketing campaign, in which I think it's good that they're making people aware of it, but it's just a clever marketing campaign that we are going to monopolize your data, because most people they're all Apple products. They have the Apple router at home, they have the iPhone, they have the MacBook, they have the Apple TV. It's all Apple, so they own every single piece of your digital identity, which makes it any different from any other company. Which is why we need open and transparent protocols.
That is, you almost like just described me there with my my suite of Apple products. It's almost embarrassing that
No, they're fantastic products.
my screen time and my Apple products, it's just embarrassing at this point. And when the Apple car comes out, I might have to switch the Tesla up to the Apple car.
Yeah.
But that would even be more embarrassing. But you made a really good point that I didn't think about, is that they are brilliantly becoming the monolith of your data, especially if you are an Apple user, and if you want to be an Apple user, and they're trying to get those customers that says, be an Apple user because we protect your privacy, which then just allows them to control all of that, which is interesting. So then it goes back to, I guess, the original question that I'm asking is, what
Mhm.
can the legislators, what can Washington do about it? Do they pass a law that says, hey, Google, Apple, you can't collect any more data. All the data that you have right now has to be turned over to an individual, and you can never collect data from an individual ever again?
No, what they can do is define a set of protocols, open and transparent protocols that have no barriers to entry, and you have complete access, but it is under lock and key. Think of it as your digital identity as like a black box. Nobody can see in unless something comes out. So you go on to your Apple device, your iPhone, where your wallet is, or you open up your Safari browser or Brave browser, anything like that, and you sign up for a website. Instead of signing up with your email and a password that's easily hacked or whatever, you have this internet black box built on a blockchain where you have your private key, and your private key unlocks your digital identity. I only want them to know this certain amount of information. That is what legislation can do. It can define a set of protocols that protects our digital identity and is pretty much our onboarding process for anything we do on the internet, where we have full sovereignty of, full control, full ownership of.
I 100% agree. And I think that's exactly what we need to do is we need to create that protocol and allow companies to innovate and build around that and with a more of a consumer focus, like focus of protecting people's identity and data. But that kind of moves into again that even that that set of regulations or protocols moves into a snowball effect as well. We just spoke about getting that birth certificate when you're younger and keeping it for your whole life, and then if you lose it, you have to go through all kinds of rigmarole to get your birth certificate back. It's changing the whole ID system, and then that's just going to trickle down to not only your identity, just as an individual, as a citizen, as somebody who travels, as somebody who votes, as somebody who uses digital. Anything in the digital space, it would have to basically change the way we think of identity.
Yeah, for sure. Having just protecting and knowing that everything's built on the internet now. We can't do anything without the internet. By the laundry, our washer we just got is Wi-Fi enabled. I don't understand why we need that, but everything is on the internet now. So like, why you put it in for 50 minutes and get out? Where are you going? Where you need to start it from? Either way, everything's built on the internet. So we need to understand why are we still having these legacy paper systems, even things such as like car titles or mortgages, any kind of paperwork. Why is anything that is a public service still in these legacy, almost like just what my grandparents and great grandparents used? So we need to be pushing for those public services and the public to understand that this is backed by mathematics. This is, for Bitcoin specifically, it's built with SHA-256, developed by the military, developed by the government. It is a hardened hashing algorithm that there are more possible combinations to guess your wallet key than there are atoms in the universe. 2 to the 256. That is such an astronomically large number that if we put all the computers together in the world and said, guess Matthew's private key, it would take all those computers thousands of lifetimes just to crack your password. So letting the public know that your information is safe instead of a 7-digit number where the amount of combinations are 9 to the 7, it's completely different. It changes. So.
And that's a really good thing. And actually, I don't think it's thousands of lifetimes. I heard it was almost a lifetime of the known universe right now to cast that. It's something
it's even more secure. Yeah.
It's just something ridiculous. And something that we actually can't wrap our hands around when it comes to time frames. Let me be devil's advocate here, because that's the best way I think to have conversations on a podcast always is you always have to have that one person that wants to play any side of the field that the ball is thrown on. Doesn't matter. I'll bat left or I'll bat right. Doesn't matter. Some people are very comfortable with paper, because it's physical. They can hold it, they can see it, they know it's theirs, they know it's in their possession. I was just in a house today, and it was just obviously it was an older couple. They're probably in their 60s or 70s, maybe even 80s, and everything is filed perfectly. Everything is in its place. Everything is they have their filing cabinet. They have all their probably records of the house was going back until they owned it, and then there were still records of the previous owner that went back to when the house was built in 1923. So there's a lot of things, but people love that. People love that physicality of this. And then with the lack of, I guess, government tech savviness, we have allowed private companies and siloed companies and centralization to basically tarnish the name of internet security, right? The hacks. We just had an IRS hack the other day. Like, why the hell is the IRS getting hacked? That's absolutely absurd. Obviously, Yahoo hacks. We know about Equifax hacks. We know about all of these hacks that went on, and that's people's data just being thrown to the breeze. We even in the crypto space, we saw Ledger get hacked the other day, and everybody's information thrown out on Reddit that owns a Ledger Nano hardware wallet or ordered one off the internet. So that is there is so much bad press about internet, digital, anything, and hacks.
Yeah.
Why would anybody that does anything in the physical with the physical even trust this new idea? And that you have some kids, we just call ourselves kids, coming out saying like, yeah, put it on the blockchain, and they're just like.
So it's kind of two questions there, and I'll answer like the physical tangible good, and circle back around to that. But when we're talking about these IRS hack or the ledger hack or any of these other kind of hacks, the hack is actually, the overwhelming majority of time is because of human error, shitty passwords, or the like for Microsoft, the Exchange hack a couple months ago, as well as the SolarWinds hack. It was because an update server had the default password and they were able to push updates to every single server. So the majority of these problems come because of bad human error. So it isn't actually in the protocol. The internet protocol, a hacker can't sniff packet sniffing is what it's called, to see your communication between, because of the early cryptography that was built into the internet stack in the 80s, encrypted end-to-end software where you cannot do that. VPN tunneling, stuff like that. These are stuff that are hardened by code. It's not usually, and the code is written by a person. So the overwhelming majority of hacks, and especially with the ledger hack, no one's funds were lost. It was because they had a database error where people could find their address and their emails and stuff like that because of a human error in the database administration passwords that were used in Ledger. So most of this is all because of human error. So what we want to do is get rid of as much human error as possible. So those websites you sign up for and you use the same password for everything, that's human error. That's not because of the protocols. That's human error. So that's kind of the answer why we use, say the kids coming with blockchain. Well, it's secure. It's the most secure distributed system that we have. So, and then if you wanted to answer that back, and I can get back to tangible.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I first want to let everybody know, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, is when people use the same password, and I want to say just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not that people can guess, like for the back end, people can't guess what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is because your password is usually ran through a hashing algorithm. And one thing about a hashing algorithm is that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 looks a certain way on the hashed end that people could say, oh, these people are using the same password. They can look at a whole string of hashes and go, these are all similar. Oh, that is what the hash of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is. But so they're not reading your password. They're reading the hash that is a result of the password. Is that correct?
Sort of. So kind of, John the Ripper is what it's called, a dictionary tag, and a popular open source hacking tool is called John the Ripper, which it has a text file with millions of the most commonly used passwords, password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so what it does, it just runs through that service, runs through that entire dictionary with these most common passwords, and then it finds it. So the hashes, there's different hashes that people use, but they're not looking at the hashes. The hashes are just for like clear text. So you can't just like go into a database and be like, oh, there's a clear text password. That is just more hidden so that you have to use, that's why you use like those, as long different characters, as long passwords as possible, stuff like that. So that, you can protect yourself from John the Ripper, really.
Long story short, that's a good reason to put some ampersands in there, or some hashtags or ats or exclamation points and big letter, little letter, and 1, 2, 3s and all kinds of stuff. Mix it up, because it's almost impossible to guess and almost impossible to read. And
use a password manager for anybody using. Use a password manager, have a master password that you have memorized, write it down, have your tangible password, and then have it generate it for you. It could be super long, and you only have to memorize one password. It's just security advice.
No, and that's beautiful. Thank you. Going back to the original question is like, you said a lot of stuff in what you're answering to my original question was, basically, well, they need to know that this is a new kind of, well, that's the thing. It's about education, about how to know that this stuff works. And again, people, like you said back a little bit ago, again, people don't care. And it's not that they don't care. It's just they don't know, or they don't have time, or that there's a trade-off to whatever, right? So you're not going to get people to know what a blockchain is, or decentralization is, or Web3 is, or whatever that is going to protect them. They just want to see the damn hack stop. and it's going to take time. So the question is, how do you get these institutions or people comfortable with putting things on in a digital form, having their ID be digital, and then not just go, bro, it's gonna get hacked. I'm not gonna use this. I don't want to use this. I've seen things get hacked, and you're like, but this is different. And they're like, it ain't different. This is on the computer, and the computers can get hacked. Why? How are you gonna sell this to me? So how do we even break down that barrier? Do we just wait for time and watch and just watch the natural evolution of digital come out, or do we actually have to make a propaganda push? Maybe that's a wrong word to use, but it is this propaganda push of new systems. How do we get this done?
Two things. Well, generations now are a lot more tech literate. You have like 1-year-olds using iPads now and being able to like fix mom and dad's issues. Maybe not a 1-year-old. Also, the job of an engineer like myself, building my own startup, and to reference Steve Jobs, is to make it stupid simple. The job of an engineer is to make it seamless. I mean, you don't need to know that Facebook works on a GraphQL API library with a Kubernetes cluster running on multiple Docker containers. You don't need to know that. Exactly. You just need to know you go to facebook.com. So the job of an engineer is to make it so simple.
So was that just nerd speak for facebook.com?
Kind of, it's how they distribute content.
That's awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah. So, but what I'm trying to say is they want to make it simple. The whole idea of the MacBook, the Apple computer, was making it easier for the everyday computer. Going back to MS-DOS, where it was all on a computer terminal. And then you introduce the GUI, and it's like, these computers, we introduced the mouse. The mouse made it so much easier, giving better feedback.
GUI is graphic user interface?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So that window, being able to point and click. So, looking at the evolution of computing, how much it has evolved since the 1980s and the early internet to now, these user experiences have been built where you can have a 1-year-old clicking through YouTube watching videos. So it takes time, but the job of an engineer is to make this. I mean, anytime you're going to try to sell a product to get more people, you have to make the onboarding process, that user experience, better. So I wish I had an exact answer now for something like data identification. How are we going to make this easier? But again, with the Facebook reference I made, they don't need to know how it's working. They just need to know that it works.
Exactly. But I guess I'm not talking about how it works. I'm talking about trust. And it's going to be impossible to switch people over. And again, I've been thinking about this for many years of identification on the blockchain, of logging in using a digital ID, just what we said, private keys. Dude, this needs to happen. But it's it's about trust. How do you get the people to trust this, again, with all of the hacks, the continuing hacks that are happening day in and day out? I mean, we just had the pipeline hack, and gas prices went up, and there's lines at the pump, and we're just like, are you serious? We're getting hacked by who knows what person, ransomware. Like, this is absolutely absurd. And you want me to trust you with my identity, which identity theft is a real thing. And that's what people are coming straight down to. It's like, sure, you can hack my Facebook, fine, but you get my social security and you mess up my credit. I'm like, no, dude. I'm not going to trust that to the government and to these people that think they know better than me when my social security card is right here in this safe right here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that ties into human emotion and like really understanding. And, I wish I had a good answer for that on, what would make it easier or what would make them understand. And that just comes down to marketing. I'm not a marketer. I'm a tech guy. That's kind of, I can come to them and tell you, hey, their password, there's more possible combinations than there are atoms in the universe. Run with that. That's more of a marketing problem than a tech problem, because the tech's here already. We just have a marketing problem. And I've always said crypto has a marketing problem.
Like, even when you say atoms in the universe, it's like, oh, that seems like a lot. But I mean, just think about how many atoms are in your desk right now that you're just sitting there. It's like
unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Like, I don't even.
It's inconceivable.
The thing's solid. I can't. Like, I don't see the atoms. Like, imagine like there's a password. All the atoms in the universe.
2 to the 256, a pretty big number. Yeah.
I don't even know what that means, man. I don't know what that means. I don't know how we're going to round off this conversation, but after 45 minutes, I kind of do. But I want to leave here with some kind of positive thought after we went through all kinds of different conversations, weaving in and out of social medias and datas and IDs and, centralization and governments and Apple and whatever the hell we just spoke about today. I want to leave on a high note on something that is positive. That's a way that we can, I guess, here's what I want to do is I want to make sure that people get paid, full stop. 2, I want to make sure that people's data is protected and people's identities are protected. And I think it's totally bogus that you have people that are billions and billions, even $100 billion rich people, from Facebook CEOs to whatever, to companies that are $1 trillion companies, all exploiting you and your data and you using their system. And thank you very much for making Google. Damn, it makes my life easy. And thank you very much for making Amazon. It makes my life easy. And you know what? Facebook is great. I haven't connected with some of my friends in 20 years until Facebook came out. I was like, where have you been? That's dope. Thank you thank you, Mark Zuckerberg, for making this. This is awesome. At the same time, it's like I appreciate you connecting me with this friend, but you just use all my data, and now you have $50 billion, and your company's $1 trillion company, and I'm still like, how do we, like, I want to come out with like some solutions. Like let's make a solution right here. Let's try to think about a solution. Is how do we protect people and get people paid?
Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind, I'll bring up what I'm working on right now. And
I just softballed it through that shit to you, right? Didn't I?
Yeah. No.
Right
no.
there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, over the past year, biggest thing what I've been doing is building decentralized social media, and what I mean by that is bringing sovereignty to the user. This Web 3.0, being able to be paid off of the internet, and it's built on the Bitcoin network, which is called the Lightning Network, where you can do fractions of a payment. So you have a content creator and you want to support them, but you don't want to give them $5. You can give them 0.3 of a penny, which compounds. They have a lot of followers, it compounds. Or a content creator, they have a piece of content that they work super hard on and they wanted to put it behind a paywall. Hey, 10 Satoshis, which is the smallest denomination of a Bitcoin, 10 Satoshis to watch this video. It's about bringing the revenue stream and what makes the content creators the most popular. What made them popular and what got their audience to keep watching them is to bring that revenue stream directly to them. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to pay, a penny and, have these routing transaction fees with a card or, having this onboarding process to verify your identity. It's just a simple click tip, and you could be paying them whatever you want. And I think it really transitions to bringing sovereignty for content creators, which a lot of content creators are being demonetized because they don't follow these guidelines and they can't show ads, and then they can't make any money, and they have to find these different revenue streams. So I think and entire industries have boomed in the last 10 years with content creators, and they've been kind of left behind. You have Zuckerberg and the guys with Alphabet, Google, YouTube, Jack Dorsey, they are worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. And it's just kind of being trickled down to the content creators, which made their platform so popular. So I'm passionate about fixing the social media problem, bringing benefit not only just to content creators, but to you as well, Matthew. How great would it be if you could just receive a donation, one of your tweets goes viral, and you receive a bunch of donations for your campaign? People getting behind a lot of people running for elections, or even you go viral and you get tipped a bunch, or little stuff like that is bringing community back together on social media.
And then that goes into my positive note for the end of this. I want to make sure that people have control over their data, and I also want to expand people's rights. And I want voting right is one of those. And like we just said about the black box and logging in with a private key, there is no reason that we're not doing that with voting machines. I want to make sure that people are, and like you said, getting tips for going viral or what have you. It's just cut the people in that are making these systems work for the most part. And like I said before, we are all content creators, no matter how big or small you are. If you're on a social media and you're putting out any content, you are a content creator, and they are monetizing that. And cut me in. I want to cut you in. I want to cut people in. I want to make sure that this
system and this economy is working for everyone. And if that it comes down to just using your social media platform, if that goes into voting, if that goes into protecting your data, if that goes into any other thing that can be more secure and transparent. Actually, I want to define transparency a little bit because I think people get worried about that. The word transparency. So let's try to define that. Transparency doesn't mean that everybody can see everything that you're doing all the time. It does not mean that everybody has open access to everything you've ever done, everything you ever clicked, every criminal record or place that you lived or your credit scores. It does not mean that.
No. What I mean by that is just transparent protocols that, okay, I know what information, it's not like so much, I know what information is being taken from me. You can look and see the transaction history of your personal data. Okay, this took this there, or having a set defined guidelines where they can take data, or, allowing to have that data, just transparency to know what's going on with your data instead of having it obfuscated and hidden.
Exactly. We have no, and just to clarify and to summarize, we don't know what Facebook's doing with your data. We don't know what they're collecting. We don't know who's buying it. We don't know how it's being used. We don't know that with Google. We don't know that Apple. We don't even know what's out there on us. And that is not transparent, nor do I know what to even be mad about that's out there on me, because I don't know what people are even looking at because it's not transparent. And we should have that power to turn these, I guess, this fire hose off of data that they're, again, you said it's the new digital oil that they're getting not only really rich on, but also exploiting our engagement as well. You are not in Ohio at the moment, are you?
No, I'm not. I just moved to Tampa, Florida.
And I want to ask you this, and this is a question just about, we're from Ohio, you're from the district. Yep. You seem like a smart dude. You're developing and creating and building, but you're not doing that in Ohio. Why not?
Mm-hmm. So started in Ohio. It was more, I'm young, got out of college, just kind of wanted to go explore. And in my industry, in cryptocurrency industries, as a engineer, a lot of companies were coming down. Miami area is very big in Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, Austin, Texas. So I kind of just went down there for that. And there wasn't a lot of, there are blockchain startups, cryptocurrency startups in Ohio, but it wasn't because it drove me away or anything like that. It was more just kind of exploring, being young and going exploring.
Will you be back in Ohio?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Cleveland's home. Go Browns. Go Tribe.
Man.
Yeah, no, big Browns fan. I'm be missing. I'll be barking down in Florida for this season. I'm disappointed. I'm not going to be around for games this year, but there'll be barks here in Tampa.
That's awesome, man. Ben, thanks for coming on and chatting with us. And yeah, I can't wait to meet you in Ohio or in Tampa, and let's stay in touch. And I can't wait to see how your company goes. And once you get that social media up and running, make sure that you make a Deemer for Congress page so I can come up there and interact.
Oh yeah, there's no barrier to entry. You get in right away.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Matthew. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Decrypt Daily. My name is Matthew Deemer. Until tomorrow, happy hodling, everyone.